Thanks, Jesse, for the kind introduction. And if we could put the slides there and go to the next slide. So, what if every game that you've ever played, every character that you've ever assumed, and every in game story that you've ever encountered could become a reality? So much so that you could live the most elaborate narrative, create your own surroundings with moving details in multi-dimension, and just live inside it. Well, guess what? You can not just live it, you can walk into these realities and literally experience every single imaginable pattern along with your loved ones, people that you may have lost and people that are still alive. These are the promises of extended reality, XR. And with COVID 19 and this shift to virtual platforms, we're already beginning to experience this mass adoption of these technologies. In these realities, not only can we see our loved ones, but also interact with them like we do now in our perceived reality. All of this is possible today with XR. With software as a building material, it's already begun to revolutionize many domains, transforming computer gadgets from these handy tools to something like a crystal ball, where you could now see into the world more vividly and gaze into it more deeply. Reality, as we know, is being replaced gradually, piece by piece, by software imitation. But these brave new worlds are also bringing novel risks. So, the question that we must ask ourselves, are we ready and able to sense these risks of extending realities to new dimensions? In the next 20 minutes, we'll explore this very question and the answers to it. So, what is XR? In the past couple of years, there has been a lot of debate around the taxonomy surrounding XR. In fact, I won't be wrong to say if there has been some sort of a war of words in a few people have taken the time to debate about it on Twitter until today. So at XR Safety Initiative, as the very first project we took upon, we took the time to standardize these terms to ensure that we can all have this common understanding of taxonomy. So what is XR, or extended reality? Extended reality is this technology that combines virtual and real environment to power interactions between machines and humans. It is essentially an umbrella term that covers many technologies that help us extend our perceived reality by means of software, hardware, network, people, and processes. And most common terms that we hear these days is VR, AR, MR. So VR is like this full immersion using digital, artificial environment, immersion into the digital environment. Augmented reality, virtual, where you have virtual objects sort of overlaid on top of the digital world, something we are all familiar with, like Instagram filter and whatnot. Mixed reality is where you can sort of manipulate the real world using VR, kind of like a forklift. Collectively, XR is transforming many domains. In the interest of time, I'm not going to go over each one of them, but let's talk about gaming, how XR is transforming gaming. So initially, VR was a concept only existing in science fiction, but due to rapid change in technology, now it's become part of our contemporary game design. In VR games, your body will be like control. Your body can be controlled, by software. To a gamer, it feels like they have become a part of the game. When you wear a VR headset, you get this complete immersion. Similarly, augmented reality in game development has constantly used smart glasses support, 3D tracking, geolocation, and much more to bring innovation to these exclusive games. AR Core is used to change users' view with animated 3D content. Its creative design has more potential than any other technology. XR is brought this revolutionary change in the gaming industry. Using these technologies, you can now explore the vivid imagination, and gaming is basically taking over this flat screen gaming. Overall, VR and XR is improving the game experience, and players can change their entire universe of gaming. So likewise, there are so many domains that are changing. With these worlds moving online and looking for novel ways to connect and create and to do business, needless to say, XR is changing lives. And bringing new risks along with it. Think about privacy risks. When you have a phone to see some kind of a AR object, and you're kind of like seeing everything surrounding, like we're living in this sort of a era of constant reality capture, so that tracks everything, every minute details of our surroundings. The concern emerge with the rise of data breaches and hacking. Security is at stake, and we'll talk about that in detail a little bit later, shortly. There is used to be this thing called seeing is believing, and but in the era of deepfakes or propaganda, where big tech firms are using these technologies to defy reality, can we really trust what we see and experience? In fact, let's look at privacy first. According to future of privacy firm, XR, or special computing sometimes that's called, is identified as one of the top 10 technologies that will create increasingly complex data protection challenges over the next decade. So managing these complex privacy issues will continue to require trained people at the center of organizations to bring human dimensions to review products and services, to assess biases, to demand fairness, and to manage the systems and tools that can handle data protection at scale. I believe we are all too familiar with the biggest privacy scandal of our times that happened, Cambridge Analytica. A political data firm hired by President Trump's 2016 election campaign gained unauthorized access to private information of up to 87 million users' data, mainly in the United States. The firm offered tools that could identify personality of American voters and influence their behaviors, and claimed that they have about 5,000 unique data points on each US citizens that were used to manipulate user behavior during 2016 US presidential election. Now, why that's relevant? Let's look at VR. With VR, in addition to recording personal data regarding people's location, social ties, verbal communications, search queries, product preferences, technology companies are also collecting nonverbal behavior. For example, users' posture, eye, gaze, gesture, facial expression, interpersonal different distances. According to Stanford University's research conducted through JAMA Pediatrics and American Medical Association, called "Protecting Nonverbal Data Tracked in VR" in October 2018, a 20 minutes VR game session recorded 2 million unique recordings, so more than just 5,000 data points about human body movements. Given this enormous amount of data collection that has blurred the line of accountability, privacy, and data protection, it's become more and more complex than ever. This clarity around data ownership, usage, meaning of consent, it's so urgent. So we have to think, pause, and think about this. What could the next Cambridge Analytica scandal may look like? And how can we avoid it? And if it was not scary enough that this is happening, there is this new technology that is already mixing. It's called eye tracking technologies, driving revenues for the organizations that want to incorporate XR into their business model. So eye tracking allows you to, gaze. It's like gaze tracking. It's already widely used in many fields of research, including marketing, psychology, medical usability, user behavior. And so rapidly, this like becoming this standard feature in most of the high-end headsets for XR. With this level of intrusive tracking and data harvesting, the concerns for privacy are increasing. And of course, these are too obvious to ignore. While most people are still talking about privacy and security in XR, a recent work at XRSI has brought a new insight to address these future unintended consequences. In the immersive technology domain, we often dance around around these terms. Some call it like ethical dilemma, security privacy challenges, and sometimes these are all lumped together in like the ethical concern. Once we start to sort of zoom out, what we discovered at XRSI, it really is about ensuring safety, and as a result, achieving trust. So let's look at this use case where uh, traditionally the attack surface for XR for technology was limited to computing devices, backend server, and the network. But with XR, this extends to include human brain. This extends to our living room. The image is referenced from a research conducted by XRSI's co-founder Ibrahim Bajili Abe, his team at University of New Haven, clearly depicting that input-output and in-network data flow for XR experiences. Abe's team published a landmark paper in IEEE Transaction on Dependable and Secure Computing in March 2019, titled as Immersive Virtual Reality Attacks and Human Joystick, basically modifying configuration to set up command and control server, and demonstrated that how you could disable and chaperone a system and modify virtual environment to guide user to move beyond their specific location, physical location. And few of these novel cyber attacks that Abe's team discovered through human participation, deception study include tracker attack, where you could essentially look where you are, chaperone attack, where the subject was moved without their knowledge. You could potentially move a person within that virtual environment. They were able to hijack the camera track, and the human joystick attack, they're calling one of them, where they could move the person, or they could disable boundaries, which is what they're calling like the safety boundaries removal, chaperone attack. So I mean, collectively, and another one, overlay attack, and this is not a comprehensive list, but collectively these new type of cyber attacks are coming to XR, and we need to be able to ready we need to be ready and be able to address these cybersecurity concerns. We also have to think about how various organizations would use XR to exploit human emotions. So this is an image from a video that went viral at the beginning of this year, wearing a VR goggles. This Korean mother burst into tears and has this very visceral, very compelling experience with her 7-year-old daughter that had died 3 years ago due to a rare form of blood-related disease. Personally, it's quite unsettling to me at first glance, but maybe well outside of what I consider, it's even like kind of unhealthy, but like revitalizing the image of a deceased person isn't exactly new, but with this new immersion, there is this new legal and ethical concerns. Does the deceased give a consent? Does the person's whose likeness you're using as a stand-in for the deceased consent? Once we have this ability to upload ourselves into XR simulation, do we really want to live forever? So those kinds of questions emerge. One of the major aspects, which is at the cross section of gaming and XR, which we don't have the luxury to wait any longer, we have to address, is child safety. XR can make you think and feel things that are not really real. Other media can give you a sense of being there, what's called like a physiological presence, but not to the extent XR can. This unique ability makes it so important to understand the short term and long term impact on our children. And everything in XR is very, very intense. Everything has major potential and serious downsides to it. I mean, think about exposure to any kind of inappropriate contents, or because the intensity of XR, kids could have a feeling of anxiety and whatnot. So we should think about risks related to what are the online risks. And if you could move to the next slide, we have to think about risk associated with content, like what kind of content are kids exposed to, related to content, like back at Linden Lab, I was the head of security for this virtual world, and wherever you bring people together in a social environment, there are these antisocial elements. For children, we are really concerned about grooming, doxing, and sexual harassment and bullying, and all this is a concern. And then risks related to commerce as well, where kids are going to be sharing personal sensitive information, financial accounts, credit card, all of these activities that can potentially lead to some illegal activities to be conducting. With over about 1.5 billion kids now moving online and for learning, many more gaming and entertainment, for even gaming and entertainment, children now are at greater risk. So we need to urgently address these and put together safety measures. And prevent online harms. There is this thing called fact checking for adults, which may or may not work depending on what kind of critical thinker you are. But for kids, we really just have to focus on prevention, because once you see something, you can't unsee. And there are some of these high level recommendations that are here, and these are curated together by several different experts. One of the ones that I want to call out is Gamer Safer, one of the collaborating organization at XRSI, and I highly recommend that we pay attention to these points. So I talked about a lot of scary stuff, and I want to give a little bit of a relief. And for me, that that's what wakes me up every day. And we are trying to proactively sense the risks in XR. So as we extend our reality by means of these hardware software network at XRSI, we recognize these challenges, and we recognize that we need to proactively address multitude of these challenges. While the core mission of XRSI is help build safe and inclusive XR ecosystem, we have several programs, as you can see listed here. And we not only just study the novel risks, conduct research, but we provide proactive ways to address these risks and prevent online harm. I'm going to go quickly into a couple of these things. So this year in May, XRSI's diversity and inclusion program and effort called the Cyber XR Coalition, it's a collective coalition of various different organizations from cybersecurity perspective, from privacy, people who focus on diversity and inclusion, put together this very first immersive technology standards for accessibility, ethics, inclusion, and safety. As XRSI's board member and the coalition lead, April often says, "Emerging trends call for emerging mindsets," and that's kind of what this standard is all about. It has a lot of foundational things to think about as we develop XR gaming or XR experiences. We talk about human-centric design, we talk about accessibility, we talk about diversity and inclusion, ethics and awareness, trust and safety, child safety, etc. So that's that. And then there is, other projects that we're working on. The projected growth of XR is bound to attract unwanted attention from both hackers and organized crime. So we sort of release this and still working on creating this XR framework. This is a 3C framework for information security framework for XR enterprises. And I recommend, that people get involved. And finally, I want to talk about awareness. So, biggest challenge of all in XR, and if we can move to the next slide, um, this is the biggest challenge in XR that we're going to face is awareness. In the world where cyber warfare, child safety, deepfake, misinformation, and propaganda infiltrates our digital communication platform, where are we going to go to find the truth? What are we experiencing right now? What we're experiencing right now is like barely the fraction of the challenge. When we have this mass adoption of XR fueled by 5G, brain computer interface, and artificial intelligence, and all these emerging technologies, and the challenge we are about to face is about to get much, much worse. So before I leave, I want to give you this platform. It's still in the making. It's going to be a trustworthy journalism platform to help build awareness and demand accountability. And that's kind of about all of it. XR domain offers great opportunity. It brings new challenges. So I encourage you all to get involved with XRSI and other organizations that have similar missions to help mitigate these risks, to better protect children and end users. And so please don't hesitate. This is my information right here. And please reach out to me anytime to share your curiosity or just mitigate risks along with me.